Welcome back to my new video. In the previous video, what we've done is we have used Mongoose to connect to our Mongo database in the cloud. The connection was successfully, and now it's time to continue to build our API and our endpoints. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button if you want to get notified once I have new videos about JavaScript and new technologies in my channel. We will have four different endpoints. One is get, to list all the to-do items in our database. The second one is post. This will help us to create new to-do items. Then we will have put, to update to-do items. And lastly, we will have delete, to delete the to-do items from our database. Now let's get started. So in our previous lectures, we looked at what Express is. So we know it's a framework, and now what we are going to do is, first of all, we are going to assign Express to a constant called app. Now we have to create our router. Next, we will define express.Router. We use the express.Router class to create modular, mountable route handlers. A router instance is a complete middleware and routing system. For this reason, it is often referred to as a mini app. So a new constant called router, and here we will initialize our router. Once that's done, now it's time to create our routes. So we will start with router.get, and this is called to-dos. So this will be a method type get. So we will use this to list our to-do items. The request body will be empty. Since it's a get, we won't send any JSON as an input. We don't need it. And now what we're going to do is we are going to use our model, which we created here, and we are going to connect to our database. We are going to use the find method. So we will say data.find. If there is an error, it will return an error. Otherwise, it will return the data we have inside our collection. So we will check if there's an error. Then we will return rest for response.json. And inside we will define an object. The first property will be success false. And then we will also send back the error. So if there's no error, then we will return the data we have fetched from the database. So success equals true, and then we will use data. So that's it. So if you're not familiar with ES6 notation, this is equal to this. So it's like easier to write it just like data. And this will retrieve our to-do items from the database. Now let's continue. We will have one more router. This time the method type is post. So this will help us to create a new to-do item. Now we are going to have a request body. Now let's create a constant. It's called to-do item, and we will get it from the request.body. Okay. Again, if you're not familiar with the ES6 notation, this line is actually equal to this. Okay. So it's, as you can see, shorter. Okay, now let's move on. Now, the first thing we are going to check is the to-do item let's say that length. So if there's any definition in it, if it's equal to 0, then we will say you haven't sent anything. So we will throw an error. Success is false. Error, let's say invalid inputs. Done. Okay, now if there's no error, then we will create a new data object. So we are creating a new schema, a new model using the schema we have defined here. So now we have to set what we have inside here, the to-do item. So we will say data.todo item equals to to-do item. So this is the value here. Then we will say data.save, and this will go to our database and save the data to MongoDB. Now, if there's an error, again, what we're going to do is we are going to do the same here. So if there is an error, we will return success false and the error description. If it's successfully, then we will just return an object with the property success true. Done. Okay, so far so good. Now it's time to create another router. Let's use put method type. For this, why are we using put? Because we want to update an existing item. Now, to update an existing item, what I need is the ID of the item so I can update it. Request response. Again, we will have a request because now I have the new to-do item which I want to set in the database. So again, I will create a to-do item constant and I will get it from the body. And as you can see here from the URL, I will get the ID. Now I will use a method called find by ID and update, which issues a MongoDB find and modify update command by a document's ID field. It's an underscore ID field because MongoDB holds the IDs. We will check this later. In a property which is underscore ID. Okay, now let's continue. Data.find by ID and update. So we will send in request params ID. This will get this ID here. And then we will also send in our to-do item, which we want to update. Now again, we have to check if there's an error. Otherwise, we will return the same here. So we will say, I've updated it successfully. You can continue. Now, one more left, and this is router.delete. So as you can find out, it's the method type delete. And here we will say to-dos. Again, we will need the ID. Request response. Here we won't have any request body. We don't need it. It will be empty. So we will say data. Now I'm going to use data find by ID and remove, which issues MongoDB find and modify remove command by a document's again underscore ID field. So find by ID and remove. Okay. So So request.params.id. If there's an error, then we will send back the success false and the error message. And if there's no error, what we will say is it's deleted. I think so far so good. Now let's continue. Now we have to prepare our middleware. So what we're going to do is we will say app, which is our express. First of all, we want to use course. I told you before why we are going to use it. It will enable all course requests. Then to read this request body, we are going to use app.use body-parser.json. So returns middleware that only parses JSON and only looks at requests where the content type header matches the type option. This parser accepts any Unicode encoding of the body. A new body object containing the parsed data is populated on the request object after the middleware. Okay? Now let's continue. And one more thing, we will use a prefix, which will be API. So every endpoint will be like API to-dos ID, API to-dos metatype post, etc. And lastly, we will bind this with our router. Then one more thing, app.listen. Now which port we are going to use, and let's say 3001. And once our app is listening, we will have a console log and we will say listening to port 3001. Oops. 301. Listen. Exactly. So far, so good. I have here Mr. C. So this is going to be success. Okay, these are correct. And now I'm just checking. It says unresolved function or meta type find. This shouldn't be, this doesn't look right. So let's check our data. We have defined it here. Require data. This looks correct. So mongoose, require mongoose. Data schema. This looks also correct. Okay, here we missed an S. Module.exports is the right one. Let's go back. Okay. Now it's correct. So far so good. Everything looks as it should be. Now let's test it, what you say. Now the first thing we are going to do is we are going to run node server.js. So this will start our mini application. Okay, node server.js, and let's see. First of all, we have to connect to our DB again. Oh, okay. We've connected to our DB and we are listening to port 3001. Great. So far, so good. Now what we are going to do is we are going to test our APIs, our endpoints. For this, I'm going to use a tool which is called Postman. Let me show you. I think this is one of the best tools to test any API. You can create collections, you can test any meta types. It has a lot of options and it is really a great handy tool. So this is what I'm going to use. You can download it here and also use it. So I will say Postman. I will open up the app. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to define my endpoints and start calling them. Also, let's open up our MongoDB. And we will also check the collections. So it's up and running. Here we will sign in. So Postman is our user interface. As you can see, I had some tests prior this. Let's clear them. Okay, we have port 3001, API, to-dos. And first of all, let's execute a get. And what we will see is actually nothing. So let me log in here. So since I don't have any data, it shouldn't return anything. Let's just send it and see what happens. So success true, great. Data empty array. This is what I wanted. So we see that we don't have any to-do item right now in our backend. Now let's verify this. Our database is called test. So it's loading. And here we will click on collections. Now it's retrieving the collections. And as you can see, we have 0 databases and 0 collections. Now, if I trigger the post, then we will create one with the data. Now let's move on to post. And in our body, what we're going to do is to do item. And let's say first to do item. Okay, now let's send this. Again, what I'm waiting for is a success true. Now let's refresh our database. And here we will be able to see our first database with the name test, and inside it we have our first to do item, which is first to do item. And the ID I mentioned before is this. So MongoDB creates an underscore ID property and inserts a unique ID here. This ID we are going to use to delete to-do items. Now I will move back to Postman. So we have, now let's use get again. So it's get. And I don't think it will send the data, but let's remove it. And let's send get. And as you can see here, we have our to-do item value with the other ones too. Success true and our data. So if we insert a second one, let's send it again. And let's use get again. Now we will have 2 items, okay? So it will continue. Now let's use put. We have to copy an ID. And I will say I will update this one to third. So let's go to body. I removed my object. Okay. Let's say third. And it's put. Okay, now let's send it. So we have received an error. It says cannot put API to-dos, etc. Now let's check our code. Is there a problem? So router put. Yes, here we are missing a slash. Now we have to, unfortunately, rerun this. Okay. Now let's move back and let's try this again. Okay, I have a success. Now let's refresh our database. And here we should see third to-do item and second to-do item. So we have overwritten the first to-do item. Now let's use the last one and let's remove the third to-do item. So I will here trigger a delete and let's send it. Success true. Now if I refresh this, I should see that that item should be gone. Voila. Actually, that's it. We have now created our backend. I'm just thinking if we've missed something. No, our backend is up and running and ready. Now it's time to integrate our front end into our backend. I will do this in my next video. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe now. And if you want to get notified once I have new videos about JavaScript and new technologies in my channel, don't forget to hit the bell button. See you soon.